One of the hottest documentaries of this past year was American Factory, which shows how a Chinese billionaire purchased a shuttered GM plant outside of Dayton, Ohio to open a production plant, and the cultural conflicts that arise when his company has to deal with the limitations of the American workforce. I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and I'm joined by Jeff Reichert, the film's producer. Jeff, the first thing I want to ask you is whether the final product of what the film ended up being was what you had envisioned when the production first started on this.
You know, it was definitely very different. And I would say if you go into making a documentary and it comes out exactly as you anticipated, you probably haven't done it right in a certain way, because there's an element of this process, especially with making verite documentaries, which this film very much is, where you have to be open to whatever's actually happening. And so we could have, going in, we sort of thought about there are many number of possibilities and things that could happen over the course of the story. Some of them did come to pass, some of them didn't, and other things happened that were completely unexpected and surprising. And a lot of those kinds of moments were sort of the backbone of the film. And if we'd had preconceived notions that we went in looking to get and weren't open to just sort of immersing ourselves and seeing the kinds of things that are actually going on the factory floor, it would have been a very different and I think probably lesser film.
You had one of the things I think is so striking about the documentary is the amount of access that is very it plainly appears that you guys had on both the workers end and on the corporate end as well. How was it difficult trying to get that kind of access, especially on the corporate side of things?
Mm-hmm. I think the access question is really interesting for this film because in some ways, gaining the access wasn't all that challenging for Julia and Steve. It was a sort of a random thing, because they made the movie about the closing of the plant back in 2008 called The Last Truck. And when the plant was purchased by Fuyao, some folks involved in arranging that sale of the facility said, God, wouldn't it be great if we documented the reopening of this legendary facility? What an optimistic story. And look, we've got these two filmmakers who have already made a movie. It could be, the greatest documentary sequel ever. And so the group approached Steve and Julia and they said, well, we're interested. It sounds pretty exciting. But, if we're going to do this, we can't accept any money from the company. We need total access and we need full editorial control, as in the company can't say what goes in and what's in and out of the picture. And to, I think, everybody's surprise, Fuyao said yes. And by Fuyao, I should be specific. The chairman said yes. I think he was intrigued by what this might look like. It was a grand enterprise for him, and I think a document of it was something that seemed like could be important. He'd seen The Last Truck, and he thought it was a good film, and so he said yes. And so getting in was in some ways not that hard, but I think it's a real testament to Steve and Julia that they were able to maintain that same level of access throughout the entirety of about 3 years of shooting. Because things did get really hard. We were in rooms, filming things that Fuyao wishes we weren't there for and wish we didn't have for the film, but they'd already agreed to give us that kind of access. It's a credit to the company, it's credit to Steve and Julia, and it's also credit to the chairman, that he kind of stuck with us in a way and believed that, even though he knew at times and believed at times that there were things happening on the plant floor that probably weren't going to be totally flattering to his overall initial vision for the project, that we would come away and make something fair. And I think once he saw the film, he saw that, we tried to do as best we could.
One of the things that was another thing that was really striking, talking about Chairman, is it Chow or Chow?
Chow.
Chow, okay. About Chairman Chow is that it seems as though he didn't think that the laws for the location of the factory should apply because Fuyao is a Chinese company. And I'm wondering, do you have any idea why that is or any insight into that kind of mindset about it? Because to me, to me, it seems like it would be very straightforward. You're opening a factory in America, you abide by American laws. But that didn't seem to be the mindset there.
No, let me before I dig into what Fuyao did or didn't do, I should say, any company, any big company is going to look at the laws around them and see which of those laws can be skirted, which of those laws can be pushed right past the boundary lines, and which of those laws, if you break it, you still end up making money. So say, for instance, if you figure out a way to save $1 million by doing something environmentally damaging, but know that the EPA is only going to charge you $250,000 every time you do it, every company, American, Chinese, Japanese, German, whatever, is probably going to take the route of breaking the law and taking the fine. Now, that said, we see numerous instances in the film of things kind of not going as planned and things happening in ways in which we wouldn't necessarily want to see happen, both in terms of OSHA, health, EPA, all those kinds of things. And I do think there was a bit of a learning curve for Fuyao in terms of getting up to speed with local codes. Our laws change all the time. Our laws are complicated, sure, but you still, if you're going to operate in this country, you do need to try to do the best you can. But I think there was some naivete on their parts. There was some sense of like, well, this is how we've been doing everything in China for a really long time. Why can't we just do it in exactly the same way? But I also think, too, a lot of the things that we as Americans would see as sort of egregious corporate behaviors would happen in any company, any big company of this size. It became easy, I think, for some of the workers to, because some of these actions are being committed by workers who were not from the United States, make the Chinese, in general, the Chinese, a kind of proxy for the bad behavior of corporations under capitalism.
And something that we were talking about before we started the interview is there's this one great moment with Senator Sherrod Brown from the state of Ohio, where where he gives a speech at the opening of the factory, as elected officials sometimes do when a place with new jobs opens. And then at the end, he inserts a line. He inserts a line where he says, "I hope you're able to vote and join a union," which causes everyone to calmly lose their mind. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious. What was during screenings? Do you get a good reaction out of that? Does that cause me to laugh? Does it cause other people to laugh?
Oh, absolutely. It's so clear that the folks who invited Sherrod Brown to give that speech did not want him talking about the unions. He did not say he was going to talk about the unions, but he's Sherrod Brown. This is his beat. Labor is one of his beats, and so I think the fact that they were so surprised, it suggests another level of naivete to an extent. But it was really, it was amazing to be there in that moment, because again, it's coming back to what we were talking about at the beginning. It's like one of these kind of documentary moments that's it's golden, and if you're not there just like immersing, capturing, looking, and listening, you may not be ready for something like that. Like if we'd gone into the film thinking we're going to make a movie that's just about these culture clashes, the union thing, it was percolating for, I would say, the first 2.5 years of the filming before, in our last 3 months, the union vote was called and it became a reality. And so we needed to be nimble. We needed to be adaptable.
As great as the movie is, towards the end, there's that heartbreaking scene where Chairman Chow is walking around the factory, and one of the other senior people at Fuyao is talking about all the jobs that are going to be cut due to automation, which will up the productivity. Automation has been really the big thing that's been taking away jobs in the manufacturing sector. And I was wondering if you could just go into a little bit more detail about how devastating the job losses are going to be from automation in the American workforce over the next several years.
Well, it's not, and I should say up front, I'm not an economic policy or labor policy person, so my statistics may not be the most accurate, but we have read something like 375 million workers worldwide are going to need to figure out new jobs and situations for themselves over the next couple of decades. Think about that, 375 million workers. That is, a significant portion of the world population. And I don't think what's happening is that companies and governments and workers are sitting down with each other to say, okay, well, if you are going to get rid of our jobs and replace us with robots, what do we do next? What is the next thing? that conversation isn't happening, and that's something that we've been hoping to spark with this film, right? It's, you can't have corporations just deciding to get rid of workers and have governments sit back and not figure out plans for how these people can be utilized or retrained in some way. The conversation needs to be a triangular one, where all those people all those groups are at the table, so we can really think about the fact that this world is going to change really, really fast, and really, really drastically. In some ways, the idea of bringing robots in to do this kind of factory work is really great for people, right? Because this is backbreaking work. It is backbreaking, it is soul-crushing, it destroys your body. It's really, really, really hard. I don't think I could ever work in a factory for more than a day, or even a half a day. But so the idea of having robots take up some of this labor is great, but we can't just do that without having a plan for what all these other amazing folks who have been working in these kinds of facilities could do.
It seems like it's something that we should have more people that are running for office talking about. I can only really think of one person that's really talking about that, and that's what some might consider a fringe candidate. Andrew Yang is really made that a central part of his platform. Do you think that's something that more politicians should be adopting and bringing up as they run for office?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, and I to be honest, I have not really followed the Democratic primary too closely as of yet. I have read a little bit about Andrew Yang and his thoughts on automation, and I am glad to hear that he brings it up in debates when he's on the stage, because I think it's easy to talk about, to talk in platitudes about how we need to rebuild the middle class and we need to, get people good jobs and bring jobs back to America. Yes, totally, all of those things, but if we are not talking about in the context of the fact that many, many jobs, many, many millions of jobs are going to disappear because of robots, then it's meaningless in a sense. The sentiment is just meaningless unless you are considering the automation portion of the equation.
So I'm actually curious, have you kept in touch with any of the film's subjects? I mean, there are so many that we see, for bits and pieces of the film. It's almost kind of overwhelming, but were there any subjects that you kept in touch with to see how they've been doing since the filming completed?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we took Bobby Allen, Jill LaMattia, and He Wong to Sundance with us, and that was really great. Wong still works at the factory. His wife and kids were here for a couple of years. They've since gone back to China to continue their education. Bobby Allen, I believe he left Fuyao a couple of months ago. It's been a bit since I've seen him. And, in the film, Jill was fired during the period in which we were filming, and she's since gone on to another union job. She's making a part for trucks at another facility not far from her house. She's making really good union wages. She has great benefits. She's in great shape.
Did she get to keep her apartment?
Yes, still in the same place.
Thank goodness, because that was when I saw her in her own apartment, I'm like, this is great, but I have a feeling this is a bad sign of things to come.
Yeah, no, I think we were all worried when she lost her job that she was going to have to go back to where she had been before, living in her sister's basement. But she found a job, it wasn't immediately, but it was relatively quickly. And the last I saw her was at a festival a few months back, and she seems really great.
Well, that is such a relief to hear. So the thing that has really kind of made this documentary get a bit more of a higher profile is that this is the first project that the Obamas decided to help distribute with their production company, Higher Ground. How did they become involved with the distributing of the movie?
It's somewhat opaque to even us exactly how it all happened. I have speculations, but I think they saw the movie sometime around and when I say they, I mean Higher Ground and the Obamas saw the movie sometime around the Sundance premiere, and they'd had a pre-existing deal with Netflix where they were going to sort of put out films that they produce, films they might be interested in putting their name on, things of that nature, series as well. And somehow I think the cards just kind of, everything just sort of, the planets aligned, I should say. And, Participant had just done Roma with Netflix and had a good relationship there. And so it seemed when this movie premiered, you had all these three parties who, had kind of worked together in a bit tangentially, thinking, well, how could we kind of join forces, and what's the right film to join forces around? Because I think the higher ground folks want to be really particular about the kind of projects that they get involved in, given the stature that they can lend to pretty much anything they put their names on. And so when they saw the film, I think it just really resonated with them, and just thematically in terms of the kind of storytelling it was, something from the heartland, something that, told a story of sort of regular people who were working jobs, and that had the potential for, to become a film that could create a dialogue around issues that we're still grappling with as a country, and things that, President Obama wanted to grapple with, I think, more during his presidency and wasn't able to for a variety of reasons.
So, as we were talking about this before, the film got nominated for the Oscar for Best Documentary Feature for you, Steve Bogner, and Julie Reichert. And this is your first Oscar nomination. What was it like finding out that the film had been nominated at the Oscars?
It was pretty awesome, to be honest. I was so nervous that my girlfriend and I went out for a run as the telecast started. So the telecast started at 8:20. We left the house at 8:15. And I brought my phone on me, just figuring that at some point I'm going to get a text, and it's either going to say, congratulations, or I'm so sorry, better luck next time, something like that. But I wouldn't be sitting in front of a telecast just waiting for that category to be called, waiting for American Factory to be named or not named. And so we were in the middle of Prospect Park midway through the run. There were people running around with their dogs. The sun was rising. It was great. And I got a text from my cousin, Julia's daughter, saying congratulations. And so in that moment, I knew that we'd gotten the nomination. And then we ended up walking back the rest of the way to our home because people kept calling us.
I'm guessing that's one of the better reasons to be interrupted during a run.
Yes. Yeah, it's a good one. A totally appropriate one.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best next month at the Oscars. And to our viewers, make sure you click subscribe, and don't forget to go to goldderby.com, make your predictions, and see if you can outsmart the smartest prognosticators in Hollywood. Again, Jeff, thanks so much.
Hey, thank you very much.